What is going on, football fans? Back at it with another New York Giants video. Before I get started, I just want to say Happy Father's Day to all the dads out there. Hopefully you guys have a great day. Also today, I will be live on the channel. Meant to do that yesterday, but things popped up. So looking forward to having some of you guys on the channel today, as I'll be doing my second subscriber live stream, and that was a lot of fun last time. But in this video, I kind of wanted to jump into what I think is a pretty big topic for the New York Giants going into the 2021 season. And of course, this year our roster is pretty much set. We're kind of waiting to hear about the Marcus Golden situation, which is about a month away. But I think for the most part, we know our roster. Now, when you look at the 2021 roster, both of these players that I'm going to talk about, Leonard Williams and Dalvin Tomlinson, are not signed by the New York Giants. Leo Williams, of course, this year signed the franchise tag for $16 million. And we'll see if the New York Giants are able to work out a long-term contract. And I'm going to jump into whether or not I think it's in the team's best interest to keep both of these players, keep one of these players, or keep neither one of them. One thing you can say about the New York Giants roster right now, at that position specifically, they are incredibly deep. As a matter of fact, that's the deepest position on the team. They drafted Dexter Lawrence in the first round last year at number 17 overall. They traded for Leo Williams. Dalvin Tomlinson's been on the team. You still got guys like R.J. McIntosh. They bring in Austin Johnson. And you got B.J. Hill. B.J. Hill was pretty good for the Giants in his rookie year. As a matter of fact, he tied the rookie record for most sacks in a season at the defensive tackle spot. And last year, some may say regressed, but what I may say is, well, he got less snaps due to the fact that they drafted Dexter Lawrence. They traded for Leonard Williams, and B.J. Hill really didn't get an opportunity week in and week out to produce for the New York Giants. But I think we could all agree that he has some talent. And one thing that you have to realize as New York Giants fans in the NFL nowadays is players don't stay with their teams. Not all players stay with their teams due to the fact that there is a salary cap, and you're going to lose good players. You look at Linval Joseph. The Giants were not able to keep him. There's a number of other players over the course of history with the New York Giants because you only have so much money to spend. And of course, all this is speculation and guessing as to what the salary cap will be next year. But right now, because obviously with everything that's going on in the world right now, we don't know how that's going to affect the 2021 cap. But but looking at it right now on Sport Track, estimation, the New York Giants have about $45 million in cap space, and I'm going to get into the cuts that they probably will make. But you may say to yourself, how do we only have $45 million in space? Well, of course, you got to remember we signed Evan Ingram to his rookie extension. We signed Jabril Peppers to his rookie extension. That added on an additional $13 million. Now, the Giants could definitely make some cuts, Nate Solder being one of them, that would jump that 45 all the way up to about $60 million. And then you can make some other moves I've talked about in the past, like Ola Tate, Zeitler. But if you cut Zeitler, then you got to fill in another hole. You could do it with a guy like Shane Lemieux, and that would save you $12 million, being that he only carries a $2 million hit. But we'll say for the sake of argument that the Giants are able to free up $70 million with some moves that they may make. Obviously, this is all an estimation. But when you look at the depth on this team at the defensive tackle spot, would it make sense for the New York Giants to sign both of those individuals? I don't think so, and I like Dalvin Tomlinson, and I like Leonard Williams. But do I think it's in the Giants' best financial interest to do so? No, because I think they have a lot of weaknesses on this roster where that money can be spent better elsewhere. Not to mention, you have a lot of players on this team that are going to need extensions. I talk about it all the time. Guys like Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley, hopefully Darius Slayton, DeAndre Baker if he gets his head on straight, so on and so forth. You may want to extend Evan Ingram, Jabril Peppers, Dexter Lawrence. So that's what you have to take into account when you bring these guys in. Could they afford to bring both guys back next year? Yeah. But then you're not going to have any money for next year's team to really bring in a player of significance somewhere else on the roster. And we're pretty strong there as is. If we were to lose Dalvin Tomlinson, yes, it would hurt. He's a nice player. He was one of my favorite players on the defense last year. But I do think that they have guys that could fill in. I do think Dexter Lawrence, and if you were to keep Leonard Williams, B.J. Hill, I think they could still be a pretty strong defensive line for the Giants. Not to mention you could draft another player in the second or third round at a much more affordable rate than what Dalvin Tomlinson would probably cost you on the open market. Now, what would Dalvin Tomlinson cost you? Well, that's hard to say because obviously he's system dependent, much like a guy like Marcus Golden. Certain teams that run certain defenses would not value him as much as others. But if you look at the course of history, and maybe the New York Giants overspent for Snacks Harrison when they did it, but 5 years ago, the Giants signed Snacks Harrison, who was regarded as the best or one of the best run stuffers in the NFL at the nose tackle position. They signed him to a contract for about $10 or $11 million a year. And I think that is what Dalvin Tomlinson would command. And you might say, how is that? Snacks Harrison was a better player. Snacks Harrison was a better player. But you got to remember, that was 5 years ago. The market has since gone up. So I think it would be fair to estimate that Dalvin Tomlinson would cost you 10, 11, maybe $12 million a year. That would suddenly cut into that $60 or $70 million that you would have to spend. Now, you could certainly do that, but if you were to bring back Dalvin Tomlinson, well, then my guess would be you wouldn't bring back Leonard Williams. I don't see the New York Giants tying up close to $30 million a year at the interior defensive line position, especially when you have young players like Dexter Lawrence and B.J. Hill who have proven to be sufficient players at that position. Now, I certainly like depth, but you could recoup that depth in the draft. Leonard Williams last year for the New York Giants definitely did a very good job when he came here. Definitely helped the run defense. Some people, a lot of people, rightfully so, may disagree with the trade, but I don't think that you could argue that he was definitely productive for the New York Giants. He's not worth what he's getting paid, more than likely, due to the fact that he doesn't get a lot of sacks, but he's very good at what he does. He's making $16 million a year this year on the franchise tag. If Leo Williams were to have a good year, which hopefully he does, it would be great for the New York Giants if he did, and I think he's one of the X factors of this team this year, he would command at least that on a 4 or 5 year deal. So the question becomes, do you value these two players of close to $26 to $30 million or close to half your cap space for the 2021 offseason? Would it make sense? I don't think it does. And if you were to let one of them go, you would get a comp pick. Now, which player would receive a higher comp pick? Probably Leonard Williams. Leonard Williams is probably going to get more in the open market just for the simple reason, if he has a good year, of course, just for the simple reason that I think he fits more defensive schemes, and hopefully gets 5, 6, 7 sacks this year and would drive up his value. I would think Leo Williams would probably net you a 3rd round comp pick, if not a 4th. Dalvin, probably more like a 4th, but maybe each would land you a 3rd. The other thing you got to look into, and of course this is all dependent on Dave Gettleman if he remains here, but Leonard Williams has ties to Dave Gettleman. I think that's the biggest reason why the New York Giants franchise tagged him and are looking to potentially extend him, according to reports. He has no ties to Dalvin Tomlinson. So that is why I think it's much more likely, whether you agree with it or not, that the Giants would move on from Dalvin Tomlinson after this year. I honestly do not see the New York Giants keeping both. I think it's very possible that they keep one here long-term due to the fact that they have all these young players on this roster that they're going to have. Some of them they're going to have to retain and bring in, and you're going to want the freedom to bring in players of impact or free agency to try to help this team. A player here, a player there, like we did this year with James Bradbury and Blake Martinez. But, the Giants don't really have any long-term contracts sewn up yet. They haven't had many players outside of those two of significance that have gotten to their second contract. But soon they will, and the Giants will have to decide which players are worth it and which players are not. And I think both of these players are definitely worth signing. I think they both definitely help the team. But looking at the strength of this team and the depth and the youth at that position, I don't think it makes financial sense for the Giants to keep both of them, which is why I've been an advocate of trying to trade away one of these two players. Now, you ask which guy has more value. That's a great question. Now, Leonard Williams makes more. Dalvin Tomlinson is a little bit cheaper, but he's kind of, he can only really do one thing, where Leonard Williams is more versatile. Let's put it that way. And I don't know. It's a great question. I guess you would have to take a look and see which teams would be willing to pay what for each individual player. And of course, you wouldn't think about trading either one of these players if you were in contention. But if the New York Giants are out of it this year, which we all hope they're not, I would look for the Giants to potentially trade away either Leo Williams or Dalvin Tomlinson, just due to the fact that they have a logjam at that position, and both of them are coming up on needing a contract. Which is why you probably wouldn't net much, right? You go back, you look at what we got for Snacks Harrison, we got a 5th round pick, and people flipped out about that, but it would, when you looked at the financials, it made sense. He never fit the time frame of this team. Both of these players fit the time frame of this team. They're young, but they play a position where we're incredibly deep, and we don't have that much cap space to be pouring a combined $25 to $30 million at the D tackle spot, especially when you have to sign Dexter Lawrence, a very young defensive lineman in his own right, and B.J. Hill is potentially coming up on a contract. So I kind of wanted to just dive into that, talk about the players on this roster that I think the New York Giants will have to make a decision with going into the 2021 season. Outside of them, when you look at the New York Giants roster, there's really nobody else that they're going to have to make a decision with. I look at it like this team got to restart in 2018 for the most part, and those guys are not coming up at the end of their rookie years. It's in 2022 where the Giants will have to make a ton of decisions because, of course, the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th round draft picks you don't have the rookie option. You only are able to sign them for 4 years. So a lot of those guys will become free agents, and that is when the New York Giants will start to have to make some decisions. But of course, like I've talked about with Barkley, like I've talked about with a lot of these guys, they could start to make those decisions next year incrementally to try to even out the cap space over the course of the contracts. But we'll have to wait and see how it plays out. But if I had to guess, going into the 2021 season, one, not both, will be members of the New York Giants. And if I had to guess, if Gettleman is still here, it is much more likely that it would be Leonard Williams. Now, they don't have to trade either one of these players. They could get a comp pick, like I said. They wouldn't have to trade him midseason if they didn't feel like the deal met what they would be compensated in a future draft. As always, guys, if you liked what you watched, please subscribe, drop a comment, maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.